do you know about GitHub? So this is, we know that you might not know anything at all because that's why you're here, or you might want a reminder, or you might just want Zoe's take on this and what she feels like, what she wants to share with you today. So we have lots of people who know nothing or something, which is, I think it's looking a bit perfect at the moment, Zoe. I think this is going
good.
well. Yeah, this is what we want, and I love those colours. There's two very pink colours there, which are I am very pink, aren't I? So there must be something about this stuff. It's like it's not this pink in real life, I have to say. It really
Is there a
isn't.
comment that came up? It's
Is
hard
there?
to see. I don't know. I can't see the comments in the Teams chat either, unfortunately.
Okay, in the comments, no.
Okay.
In the chat, no. Somebody might have said something on here, but I was looking at my top and I missed it.
That's reasonable.
Okay, so lots of people know either nothing or something, the vast majority. Okay, so the other, you have two more questions, and then has anyone ever shared code with you through GitHub? And maybe you thought, how intriguing, I don't know what to do with that, or I like the fact that they're sharing something with me, but I don't know how to access it, or not, I don't know how to. So I think that does happen, doesn't it? That happens quite a lot.
That's the premise of the whole presentation. Like someone said it and you're like, what's that?
Yeah,
Maybe not
exactly.
sure. Excellent.
Yeah, so after this, they will know what to do with it. Will they
I
not?
hope so.
Yeah. Okay, so lots of people said no, but a lot of people have said yes as well. So they can now revisit that email that someone shared something with them and know what to do with it. Okay, and I think you have one final question on this one, which is, do you use any version control? Are you okay to ask this one at the moment, Zoe?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So,
even if you don't even know what that question is even about, just put no, nothing at all. Like, don't
yeah,
even know what you're talking about. It's fine.
yeah. So yeah, so but I mean, my sort of previous, I suppose, versions of version control, if you see what I mean, is just literally you have a different version, you just put a different name on it. You know,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah. So
I've got
there is an
yeah.
answer like that because some people do that, like version 1, version
Yeah.
1.1, version 2, rewrite
Mm.
version 3. So yes, that is version control as well. So
Yeah.
people may be familiar with that too. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that answer. It's quite long.
Yeah.
Like reading it, like yes. You're like, oh yes, now I understand that. Yeah,
Yeah.
changing the
Well,
title.
I'll give people just a second or two just
Hmm.
to read those. Okay, so most people are in the yes, in the sense I have saved my files. Yeah, like I said, with the different numbers. So that's kind of the most common thing to do, isn't it? So you probably got lots of different sort of whole versions of something, and they've got different names. And you'll have a front sheet which will say what version it is and when it was changed and things like that. So there you go. So those are the three questions that you invited our lovely audience to answer. Zoe, and I've just moved it on to the next one, which just says if you've got any questions for Zoe or comments in general, then you can put them on the next screen. But now it's very much time to hand over to you, Zoe, so you can tell people all about Git and GitHub.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I'll introduce myself first of all because I always forget to do that. I'm Zoë Turner. I'm a senior data scientist at the strategy unit. Only recently moved the back end of last year, and I've been doing some training for various organizations for an introduction to R&R Studio training. I've been using GitHub for a while in my previous role, and now I've come into this new role, hopefully doing some training that I could offer to analysts across the Midlands. We've had some training before through NHSR community that colleagues at NHS Digital, now NHS England, did for us. And I would like to pick up some of the work that they've given to us as NHSR community, who I work for. It's in my job description, which is wonderful. And this was a presentation that I gave to one of the webinars. So there is legacy on YouTube. I'm a YouTuber, according to my daughter. There is an hour-long presentation. I didn't look back over it because that's kind of embarrassing looking at yourself, but the presentation is exactly the same. I went over it and I was like, oh, this is quite good. It's possibly funny, which is why it's from 2021. So I'm using my own kind of copyright as well. So this is on GitHub, and I've given myself copyright to reuse it, which I didn't need to change because I've moved organizations, if that makes sense. So this isn't actually owned by me, but it's available to reuse, which is what I'm doing here. It's like plagiarism for yourself. So I'm going to introduce GitHub, but I am not going to cover setting up an account, and I'm not really going to talk about version control as such, although it's clearly one of the things that people introduce GitHub to people as, and it's a conduit for it. And I said it's not going to be too technical. And one of the things I've discovered since I did this presentation in 2021, as time's gone on, I've realized GitHub's value to me has been about extending my community interactions with people. So through the NHSR community, through my own team, I was using it as a way of keeping issues, keeping logs of discussions that we've had. It's more about people than actually code. And I didn't know that when I first wrote this, but these lines still were relevant, which is interesting. So you might be like this, which comes from Schitt's Creek, a very funny Canadian comedy from a number of years ago. I am very old in that regard. So what is GitHub? I know when I first asked to have Git and GitHub on my computer, my IT team at the time was like, sorry, what? What are you saying? Because it's not a particularly great word to use, and it has some history. But when somebody says their code is out on GitHub, or can you share it with GitHub, or can you put an issue on our thing, you're like, well, what is it? So who uses it? I think everybody here could use it. But actually, it's not just the analysts and the data scientists. I put academics here. For me, it was teams and organizations. And I think these links, if it shows, it goes to my old team, the CDU data science team, and organizations. At the time, it was NHSR community. The strategy unit has one. NHS England has a GitHub, NHS Digital, even though they've moved into NHS England. There are GitHub repositories all over the place. So it's a great place to kind of be pointed to, but what does it do? We often put code in there. Occasionally we put data files in there. So I've put up things like CSV files for the training courses that I do for Introduction to R&R Studio, but I don't put large files up there. I don't put passwords, clearly, because that's dangerous, and things that would also be deemed sensitive and confidential, like anything related to patients, staff, even your own details. They're important. That doesn't go up there. Anything patient identifiable, of course. So what does a new account look like? I'm not going to show you today, but I'm hoping that at a training course in the near future, coming soon, that you would come along and we get you set up. Getting your account set up is quite easy. In fact, I have 2 accounts because I got my name wrong. I tried to link it to my Twitter account, which I'd not wanted to be a Twitter person. So I'd reluctantly come up with something that was meaningless. And then I mistyped it. So I have 2 accounts, and this is my training account. So it's kind of blank when you look in. So this is the first account, my training account, but you can do this with your own, with your GitHub account. So this is my own that I maintain. I actually, this is not up to date, clearly, because it was a snapshot from 2021. I've updated what I'm currently working on. I put badges on, and I've just kind of had fun sort of coding things, changing things around, just saying what it is I do. And so your GitHub can look like that. I've actually got more things called repositories as well. So I've been working with stuff. So when people ask me for code or how did I do that, I could send it to people. But what I tend to do now is I always think, well, it's code. I can put that on my GitHub and somebody else might want it as well. Somebody might want to discover it. So when you're looking for something, that's usually when you've had a one-to-one discussion. But say if you want to find something on GitHub, a classic is what I look for in these slides, which is anything to do with NHS numbers. Because I didn't realize until I went onto GitHub and looked at our packages specifically, there are other packages that that NHS numbers are generated on an algorithm. It's got its own wiki page, for example. You can search through the entirety of GitHub to see about information that's on there. And there are global searches that you can have. So the search engines took a bit of time to get used to with GitHub to try and locate things. It's got a really precise, like a library search system. So if anybody has ever worked in research or libraries using things like ands and ors, and it's got its own way of looking for things, but it is very, very powerful, more powerful than me looking for my code on my own computer, because I struggled with that, whereas GitHub was much easier to locate my data. So on this slide, what I've done is I was looking for NHS space number. I think it doesn't have to be necessarily uppercase, and you can look for things like in this organization, which is the one I was in, possibly NHSR community, or the entirety of GitHub. So it can be very precise in where you're looking, which is nice. So I looked for the entirety of the internet for this one. Internet, GitHub. They're not the same things at all. And I found several things. Some of them I wouldn't understand how to use because they came out as Python. There are 8 languages used. PHP, I'm not familiar with that one either, but there were some R programs or packages, which is what I was looking for specifically. And when I restricted it, so you can restrict by the language that you use, and it may be that you're more familiar with SQL, you will probably not find much in the way of things like Excel, as in Excel workbooks or skeleton type templates on GitHub, because it's just not a coded language. So VBA and macros may be on there. I'm not sure. I've not really explored it. But in terms of code, I was looking specifically for my favorite language at the moment, which is R. And I found a couple of packages, just a couple. CRAN is on here. So this is a mirror of the original one, which is on GitHub for anybody who's interested in R and CRAN packages specifically. So it was a package that this is actually Mark, who then later wrote for us for the NHSR community, a blog about his package. It's to work with NHS numbers and to check that the NHS numbers are genuine, because there is a checksum that you can do in the maths context, which you can find the details on wiki pages. So from the very beginning, looking for my own repository, looking for myself in a sense. When you go to GitHub, you can type your details in the top right, and then you can find in users, because you've got specific categories, you can find things. You could find users. Now, my username is not the same as my real name. So the history of that is my Twitter account. So I think if you looked for my name, bear in mind I have 2 dots over my E, so I don't know if it's clever enough sometimes with that. I'm very difficult to find, it feels. I found it with writing Lectuga, which incidentally means lettuce. It's not spelled correctly though. Then if you want to look for the repositories, because on my repositories I had 35. So those are like projects of data that I put onto GitHub. I've got more now because I've done more things since. You've got different ways of getting your, you can sort of subcategorize what repositories there are. There'll be some that I've created that I own. There'll be some that I've brought from other people, which may be under forks, or there are things like clones, and the next ones will explain what those are. So the point is, my repositories here, 35, some of them, the majority will be mine, but some of them may be things I'm working on with other people. And I have copies, like carbon copies, but then I've worked on them separately to the originals. Just quickly, and these are the kinds of things that looking through this, I would go into greater detail for a training course, absolutely. We have funny terminology in anything that we're learning in terms of R particularly, and also GitHub. I mean, the name GitHub is a word in itself, but you will hear things like I said, fork, without, batting an eyelid, because it's one of those words I use a lot, and clone. What a fork is, I don't know why it's called a fork, but as I said before, that some of these repositories are not mine. I've taken copies. There are 2 types of copies. And a fork is a copy that I've brought over that I have no right to that account at all. So I go, oh, that's really nice. I'm allowed to take that because there's a license on it. I can bring it over to my side, which I could do for these slides, for example, and then I can change them if the license gives me permission to do that. A clone, though, is when I'm part of that team or that organization and I take a copy of it, but I can directly change it. Now, if you clone something by accident, you meant to get fork, you won't have rights to do it. So this image on this screen is when I took something from Chris Bealey's. I knew I didn't have rights to it because it's on his personal repository. And so I did a change and created this error knowing it would happen because I can't update his repository. I can't do anything to his work. So I could take the clone, but I'm actually linked to his copy, his original copy. Saying that, it may not be the original copy. It may be a copy of a copy of a copy. So bear that in mind too. And to give this information about whether this is a copy of a copy and how do I use it and where is it and what is this even, there's importance of having a README. Now, I did start doing this when I used to have folders and names of things. I would have like a little notepad with a README saying, you know, where this came from, who to speak to, who's in charge of this, if it's a national return or a regular return, who does it go to? And I put a little README notepad file. And that's essentially what the READMEs are for your GitHub repositories or other people's, clearly. It should tell you what it is, how to use it. This is one for R because it was for the NHSR community, but it tells you how to get that package from that repository onto your computer, what code to run. Sometimes examples are in there, images, pictures of what it is. Say if you've got an SPC chart, which is what we've produced through the NHSR Plot the Dots package, you'll have an image. It's a lovely image on the README showing you what your chart could look like. Things like that. It's just an insight into what is this. And I think that's the key to GitHub for me, is that it makes you think publicly, how do I explain this to somebody who just sort of comes to my site and they may not know anything about what I'm doing. They might not even understand what R is, but what does this thing that I've put out here do? It could be even a book. This was just for R people as well. And it's kind of maybe hopefully encouraging you to think, oh, R's a good language. And maybe I should do an introduction to R in R Studio because this sounds interesting. It's not just about statistics or cleaning your data, although those are really fun things to do. I get very excited about it. You can produce books. So although the README is like a page cover to what code it is you're working with, you might see books on GitHub where people have published their books through GitHub as well, which is really just mind-blowing. So this is a README for a book. It's a place for code notes as well. So if you've ever had that, and I've done this so many times where someone says, this is really useful code. Could you just give me like a code snippet? How does it work? They're called gists in GitHub, and they're fabulous for just throwing in a little gist. And I think for this YouTube video, which is a bit small actually, because I've made it a bit small, I'm looking for myself to find my gists. So it was a couple of steps to find it. I think all the YouTube videos are on my YouTube site, but I think I should put links into this. I should update these slides, take them over, fork them, and then redo them and add some links. So you can look for people's gists. They could share their link with you, or you can just see what kind of code is out there in that kind of snippet area. It's not a project. It's just like this little bit of code. Here you go, throw it out. And it's a nice way of sharing it because you may need to share it again in the future, or somebody may wish to discover it. I've mentioned licenses a few times, and it feels like a bit of a minefield when it comes to GitHub, because what is a license? How do we use it? The two that we tend to use, particularly for NHSR community, and the best person to, and I've had this with Chris Bealey, is I've misunderstood how the licenses worked, and he's helped me out a lot. If it's your own work, or you're wanting to see if you could use somebody else's work, there are two permissive licenses that we'll see a lot of. MIT license is usually for code. I use that for shiny applications and things that are built in code. And Creative Commons, you'll see that for images, if people take a photograph and they say you can use that for how you like, and also for writing, for text. So I've done that for blogs, for example. You may also think, I think it's OGL, which is a government license, open government license. These have all got their intricacies and you may see that, but you can always check with the people themselves. And if there is a repository or some code that's shared with you with no license, just check with people, because it may be that they just overlooked it, or they put it on before they realized that was needed, because they may be permissive in how it's used, but they haven't said explicitly they're permissive. So everything on NHSR community, and if there isn't anything, we would change it. It will be open license to take the code, to use as you will. And I think for these ones, you don't have to necessarily, Chris could always confirm, maybe that's another huddle. I don't think you have to say where to give credit, but there is such a great community spirit within R to give credit to people. Because even if you can just take it and do it yourself, it feels like a really good thing to give a nod to someone and say, I'm going to give a nod to myself. Thank you to myself. When I used to work in this team. Yeah, that's great. So you'll see the licenses in the top sections of your GitHub. So if you go to the so this is the repository that we can see on the screen. We can see I used R. There's an R folder, data feed for that particular one for the service demographic app. A git ignore, which is a thing I use in R to ignore certain files like CSV files, R data files, which is a data type thing, things that I could get tripped up on by accident. It's a safe fail-safe so that you don't save things there that could cause issues in terms of confidentiality. The license is in there, and it's also shown in the about side. And then the README file that you can see is what's published underneath where it says readme.md. And then the actual code is the app.r for this particular repository. Now, this has changed a little bit for the experiences, the patient experiences dashboard. So it's still being worked on within the CDU data science team. They're renaming because things changed, but they're still working with the text mining project. I think it's now becoming PX text mining, but you can check out their website and see, and their GitHub and see where they are. It's still all open. But what is really useful about the about, and I use this a lot on people's repositories, is if they publish things either through GitHub, which is a free way to publish websites, books, that kind of thing, presentation slides, you often see people's links as well. So this is to a Shiny app, which is hosted through the Nottinghamshire Healthcare Foundation Trust Shiny server. And so that link is an old link, though, I think, just bear that in mind. It will take you to the hosted app so that you can see it. So they're really useful areas too. Now, when it comes to version control, I wasn't going to mention version control, but I think it's a really useful thing because I did ask the question at the very beginning. You know, when you have a file and then you change it and you have 1.1 and 1.2 and then 2, and then I get confused and get lost. Version control is really difficult for me. This makes my life so much easier. I take a copy of my code. So if I had a SQL script, I would take a copy of it, and that would be a branch in my repository. And then I would change it, and all of those changes would be recorded. So what is amazing about version control is if I delete things, and I've done this in SQL code where you're a bit like, I don't want to quite delete it. I'll comment it out, and I'll put a comment about why I'm commenting it out. And then your comments kind of grow and grow and grow and grow to the almost the size of your SQL script that you would like to use. With your version control, you can add and delete, in a sense, with abandon, because you can put comments about why you did it, and you can reverse them later if there's a problem or pip them back. You've got your history. So this screen is really just showing you the start of that journey where you take your repository and you take your code and you do a copy. So when you go to somebody else's information and you're kind of exploring it, you can see on the front, the main as it's now called, some people's will say master, but we've moved away from that because of its connotations with slavery, which is a nice move as well. That's the kind of published area. But in the background, in these branches, you may see things where people are working on stuff like slide templates and distill templates. That's work in progress development, and that might be of interest to you too. And as I was working with my team, which is what I've kind of built up my experience with, and I was never, anything that I do, all of us, we're never going to be brilliant when we first start. You get better working together. And I got better working with GitHub because I got better working with my team. We used a kind of process, and everybody comes up with their own different processes as they work along. We would open an issue, and then we would create a branch that was related to it, the branch being a copy of the main. And the issue was a way of keeping information about why I was doing that work. And it was just revelationary to me that I could write about what I was doing to keep a track of things. How frequently have we looked back at our code and gone, where was I with this? Why did I take a copy with it? Why is it version 2? And I haven't quite finished it. What's going on here? And then other people couldn't necessarily comment on it. So I've raised issues. And Chris has seen them because you can set notifications to yourself, and he's gone, oh, I think you should look at this or do that one as well. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's really brilliant. Because it can be quite tricky matching your, well, not tricky, but you might have an issue, which is more like in a help desk kind of point of view, because I used to work in a help desk years ago. That would be your initial conversation. So somebody would say, here's an issue, here's a bug, here's a development thing, here's a suggestion, and you can do that as a user of GitHub to other people's repositories. You can go, I really like this, but I don't understand this bit in the README. Can you help me with it? Or this link's broken. So you can put issues on people's repositories. They take that issue, they make it a branch, and they work on it. And we were using the numbers between them to connect them. You have this connection anyway, but I was using it as a visual cue. Now, I have seen other teams like NHS Digital, they put names or initials in theirs to differentiate whose branch it is, so who's the main branch. And we didn't do that, but we were a very small team. So people have different ways of working. But essentially, what's really nice, and I do this now even when I'm working on my own, because I don't trust my own way of working. I do my own issue, I do a branch, and then I bring it back into my main when I think I've worked it out, because there's so frequently I've not done that and I've broken my own code. So be kind to yourself. Practice, even if it's just you, even though it seems like a really long way round if you are going to do this. I'm kind of deviating from just exploring GitHub because I love it so much now. But we can chat as well in GitHub. And I've chatted on issues and I've chatted in projects, because you can do that now through GitHub. And this is a particular one, which I'm really pleased I saw this slide recently for reviewing it for this talk. In Open Safely, if people were aware of that, Ben Goldacre's team through the COVID pandemic, the early days, and it's now become the Bennett Institute. They had it's a trusted research environment that they've developed and continue to develop that uses HES data, hospital episodes data, for research purposes. So researchers can access the data without ever seeing it. So they can submit code to it, get the results back, and they never see the data. Goldacre review to read more about trusted research environments, and also pleased to the NHS analyst to have good training, which we're going to try and do in the Midlands, and also sharing our code, because this is public information, and also we can benefit from other colleagues across the UK seeing our code. This conversation was also amazing for me. If you work in System 1 data with ethnicity category codes, the grouping of one of the codes is, let me just see where it is. We've got 4 is in grouping 6. So I think African was being put into Black as a category. And I was a bit hesitant to that one, because I was thinking, well, there are South Africans, and obviously in other countries as well, across Africa. It's a continent, it's a big place, to say that's one category of Black. Should that be Black? And it was nice to see that the code lists were out in Open Safely, that they published those. They published the code that's used in Open Safely. And Rahini Matter has done a talk before about her research into the missing categories in hospital episode data, to see if there was a predominance in one ethnicity group or another. So we had this conversation about it. And I like that, because it's out for somebody else to discover now. So somebody else may do the same as me. They may go, hang on, in System 1, we've got African, but the category is Black. Is that right? In GitHub, there is now reference to that conversation and the code beneath it. It came from System 1, so they were using what System 1 had determined, which is great, but now I know where to take it up again with if that's needed. I was working between read codes on System 1 that may change to SNOMED, so that may no longer be an issue. Actually, there's a link to that, so there's probably more conversation afterwards as well. And the point with issues is anybody can get involved. So if you have expertise in that area, then you can go, oh yes, well, this has changed, or this is why we did this. The other thing about GitHub, which is kind of interesting, is you would kind of assume that issues were about conversations, getting things done, but sometimes you find that there was a problem like this one. And if people are SQL analysts here, as well as maybe using R, because this is a specific R thing, I don't know if it affects Python. Sometimes you have errors that are bugs not going to be resolved. And so this gives you the history of it, a little bit like Stack Overflow if you've ever used that, but this is on GitHub specific to the packages that seem to be broken. This relates to an issue that we have bringing in data from a SQL server into R if you have nvarchar max anywhere in your data. If you have that, it doesn't allow it to come through. So the people on the Microsoft side say, well, that's an ODBC problem. And the people on the ODBC driver say, that's a Microsoft problem. So there's an impasse. Nobody's going to solve it. So the way to solve it, if you do care, is you need to put your nvarchar at the end of your select statement, or change the type of data type for it. But the reason I found that out was because of this. So there's a conversation where someone's gone, there's a problem. Yep, there's a problem. We can't solve it. This is a workaround. It appears in there. You can download files as well. So if anybody has come to the, well, this is for one particular thing that we're looking at, but if anyone's ever come to an Introduction to R&R Studio course, we have small CSV data files on there, and this is the same way to download all the files, is a zip file from GitHub. So you can download, if you wanted to download somebody's entire GitHub repository, but we've got our data files on its own GitHub repository, so you can just download the data files. And you can download individual files too. So this is just a YouTube video just showing you how to do that, because it's a couple of steps. You have to go to the raw code for CSV files, for example, to get the file. So it's just a little bit of a sneaky way around, it feels like. But there's always improvements in GitHub as well. So there'll be things that I haven't included here because that's 2 years ago. So there's always, like with R&R Studio, if you do use those, or if you'd like to use those, there's a lot of new stuff coming in because sometimes things are not really brilliant and then they improve it. Free web page publishing page. I'm pretty cautious with spending money. If something is on GitHub and there's a website that I want to publish from it, or presentations like this very presentation, I don't want to pay for a site to do it. You can publish it in GitHub. There's a few steps to it. And the thing about the presentation slides, this is just showing how to find the links to the HTML. What GitHub does is it publishes HTML, raw HTML. But the confusing part of some of our repositories is that you have both the code aspect of it. I generated this using R to produce HTML. So this is just a little slideshow to show that. But I'm going to move on just to show a few more things and see if there are any questions that people have, because I really, really enjoy questions. So please do give me questions. I've published blogs through here. Websites are blog sites as well. I started off by doing NHSR blogs. So I would submit my blog to the website, the people who, well, I now publish through NHSR because I can do that through WordPress. And if anybody has a WordPress site, that's nice. But it's very click and drop, and I like code. And I like to do it free as well. So I've published a lot of blogs. And yeah, there we go. Can we stop for today? I want questions. Please throw me questions. Oh, there's a nice GitHub thing. And you can come to NHSR and practice is the point. Have a look around the links that we've got, contribute with issues. It's a community. So you're part of the community. So come and join in.
Thanks, Zoe. That's great. I do. There's a couple of questions, but I suspect people will kind of want to go and try this out, and they'll come back with more questions. And I know you'd be very happy to receive them after today.
Yes.
To advance people's joy of GitHub.
And there's no question is too simple. So on the NHSR Slack group, we encourage people to come on and ask questions. It's not just NHS and it's not just R. So that's a bit, we've branded ourselves, misbranded in a sense, but it's a legacy and it's got a brand.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. So it does feel, I suppose it's a little bit sort of not scary, but people may not feel it's for them, but what you're saying is it very much is. So there's just a couple of points that people have made on here. Can you see the screen? I'm about to sneeze.
Yes, I can. So Git saved me this morning. Introduced a bug recently. Haven't we all done that? Was able to use the blame feature. I don't like the word blame, but yes, there's a feature where you can look back at the history of that particular area to see where the changes occurred. And they call it blame. It's not very nice, but it gives you the history of that area and then commit it. That's brilliant, and reverted the broken change. Isn't that such a great feeling? With something easy we can do as a first step to practicing using GitHub. That's a really good question. And I will give that some thought, particularly in supporting the Midlands Decision Support Network, because I want to make it, because the trouble is, like with R, there's so much you can do. I can go too far. So how do I break that down? So please find me if that's something that you would like to do, just to try that out together maybe. And then if that works, then we can share that with everyone, because I'm not sure. And what do you mean a mirror cran for R? So in R with the packages, CRAN is called a comprehensive, I say this every training course and I can't remember what it stands for, but they check the structure of the packages to make sure that they will run on all different computers, that they have documentation. And so CRAN is a mirror of the GitHub that's where you create your package. So we've done this with NHSR community. We created NHSR plot the dots, and then we submitted to CRAN and they accepted it. So there are two versions. There's the one that you get directly from CRAN, and then there's ours on NHSR community, which is being developed further. So the one on CRAN doesn't change unless we submit changes. So some organizations, some IT teams do restrict access to GitHub, which is quite difficult to navigate when you're trying to find people's code or get other packages that are not on CRAN, if that's the approval process you have. You're showing NHSR community website.
Indeed.
Yeah. So this is the website that's not in R, sadly, but maybe one day. We have the link there for Slack. If you have any difficulties getting into Slack, please let me know and I can let you in directly. And we've got some other events and things. So the blogs are where I've been starting to write about code a little bit. So questions like faced here, where do you get started? That feels like a blog trigger for me to go, okay, how do we get started? And then how do I get that out there so other people can benefit from it? So frequently we answer people's questions and we answer it repeatedly, but sometimes, well, quite often actually, I find, let's do it in one place for the benefit of anybody, and people that we don't even know may stumble across it and go, that was really helpful. What is Slack? Oh, and how can we use it to get in touch with NHSR? Been learning R slowly. Oh, well done. So NHSR Slack, not every organization allows it. So Slack is a communication device or a medium, let's say, social media type thing, but it's a closed unit that's used by many businesses. Ours is very open community. So the logging in is based on anybody joining that account. There is a more restricted community, which I would say definitely consider going to, which is the Government Data Science Slack group. And in that one, you need to have an nhs.net account or a gsx.uk secure account, I think, for local authorities. But regardless, I can let you in there too as public sector employees, and you'll find civil service from across all of the organisations across the 4 nations and NHS people. So you're very welcome, and that has a lot of discussion in data science, and that's more of an enclosed area. But they're both not totally secure because they're hosted in the US, like Twitter is, to be fair. So would you suggest the default is to fork? I think in the first instance, if you're just kind of new into this and not part of a team, you'll be forking everything. You'll fork everything. If you join a team or you come into the NHSR community and we give you rights to contribute to a repository, you'll get support then to clone. So your default start off is always fork. But if you have access to both, my default is clone because I'm part of teams, if that makes sense. Your default changes depending on who you're involved with, which teams you're with. And what are the benefits of this over good old Stack Overflow, which feels easier and smoother to follow? They're different views. That's an excellent question. Stack Overflow is brilliant for questions and answers. That's its view. And you can update your questions and update your answers. GitHub, it's not a repository for questions and answers. They're specific issues to things that you're looking at that gives you greater knowledge of what's gone on. So in our ad hocs, let's say our one-off data analysis, there'll be lots of emails exchanges. And so what the GitHub is kind of doing is taking those email exchanges and putting them with the project, with the code. So that's its tactic. I found it really useful, but I would not say don't ever use Stack Overflow because I'm always on there. That's how I code. I'm always searching for things. It's just really useful to always also consider, is this something that's a bug? Is this something that they know about already? Are they already working on it? And that's where you'll find it on GitHub. You may also find it on Stack Overflow as well. Oh, thank you for this. I can't see the bottom of that. I think my team and unit aren't big users or Git, so I'll definitely recommend it, especially for version control. Yes, well, get in touch, and I can talk to your team as well. I find this, it's more about teams, and it feels really, there's a word, isn't there? Intimidating, because it's code, version control, GitHub, there are all sorts of things. And when you look on Stack Overflow, actually for GitHub, about how to use it, it's very codey, it's very computer science, and that can feel intimidating. And I think GitHub has worked really hard to make it friendly and look friendly on their website. So this does sound similar to SharePoint. Yes, it is in a sense, but SharePoint doesn't necessarily show you line by line your changes. It shows you, maybe it does, I could be wrong, but SharePoint is not a code sharing format. It's more about text, isn't it? Sharing information, say intranets and things, knowledge management. And I think code people do tend to sort of sometimes use those because that's the only thing that's available to us. But GitHub is specifically for code. It's been built for code. And so I don't like SharePoint because I can't see your SharePoint site and I can't see what you're coding. So I don't like it. Because I want to see people's code. And the other thing is it can feel scary putting your code out there because you feel like people will come along and say, you've done that badly or that's wrong. And I have put out so much broken code. It's still there. I challenge you to find it. And it's not a big challenge. You'll find it. It gets easier. As we first started, and not everybody maybe caught that bit at the beginning, analysts are nice people. So I've given lots of training and people have been incredibly lovely. And I think they are just so lovely. I have had some difficult training sessions and I have forgotten what I'm doing midway through, and people have given me the support I've needed. So it can feel scary. So we're here as a community, as people to work with you, because it's not about the code. You could be using anything and you could be publishing it anywhere, but it's about people. GitHub accounts, personal email or organizational email? Another great question. I've done mine as my work email. So I've changed mine from my trust email because they didn't use nhs.net. I'm now on nhs.net. You can hide your emails. So people can't necessarily see them. They don't need to see your personal details. They don't have to see anything of that at all. I do share mine because I really want people to come and find me. I think I go and find them a lot and say, hey, look at me, I'm doing this. So you can use any account that you like. Just actually, if we're going to talk about accounts, do consider for both Slack and for GitHub, two-factor authentication just for security. Anything you do with social media, Twitter, Facebook, two-factor authentication is really good for your own security. So I don't have a problem with either email, but also thinking about it, I think as I talk, some IT teams may block a random email address. So they may block Gmail, not Gmail, what's it called? GitHub. So bear that in mind. So that's more of a technical security difficulty that we may face. But I think to use it, I can't foresee a problem with either. Because if you publish something and didn't take responsibility for that necessarily, seek help because something's gone wrong, it doesn't matter whether you've used your personal or organizational email, you're still a person using it. But I've used organizational emails, even for personal things, in a sense. So it's more, I've gone for organizational and then published blogs, which are my own. They're my own websites. It's my own words. I'm responsible for those words. They're not representative of the organization I'm with. You could have two accounts. That's another solution.
Okay.
Any more? Oh, there's another one. Apologies if already covered. Oh, there's more. Can you keep the code private? Yes, you can. You have fewer options to do things. So I don't think you can publish, for example, your website unless you have a paid account, but you can do public and private. So sometimes we use private because we are in the process of getting it set up and it just feels like it's a good thing to do, not just like put it out completely like blank, like a skeleton of it, just saying read me and nothing else. So we have done that. You can archive as well. An archive doesn't get rid of it, it just sort of like pushes it out of the way, but it does mean that you can bring it back. So yes, you can have paid subscriptions, which means that you have more work. And it's not just GitHub. People have GitLab, host it locally within their own firewalls. I've never done that. At the strategy unit, do you use GitHub? Yes.
So, Zoe, we're just about to finish.
Oh yes. Oh, and
So
you've got to say something.
no, I know. Yeah. Well, I only just so I can just finish on a couple of slides before people rapidly disappear, and also so I can say thank you. Thank you so much, Zoe, for coming to talk to us again. I always enjoy you coming on, and you'll be here again soon. I'm very sure about that. But just so thank you, and I enjoyed that session. So just to say, in the next couple of weeks, next couple of huddles, we've got, this is another one which was introduced by Zoe, introduced me to Hugh Day, and we've got an exciting session called the Weapons of Maths Destruction, which is going to be our next session. We then, coming up, we'll have the strategy unit's new data science team with Zoe, and without the dots over the E. I'm so sorry about that. It really shines out to me now. I think, oh my god, that's lazy on my part. And Chris Bealey, we have a session on multi-criteria decision analysis in healthcare devices coming up as well soon. And Stacey Croft, who was on the line, who may not be now, is going to be telling us or feeding back from the system dynamics training that has been happening over the last 6 months. So I'm really looking forward to those sessions, or 2 sessions in fact. And just very quickly, as I mentioned before, we've got several of our favourite courses. We have new dates for them, and some typos for your perusal as well. So, so please do take a look at the website. I'll email everybody anyway to tell you about these in a bit more detail. Some of these are relatively significant in terms of the commitment, so you need to have a look at those and get them agreed with your manager. And I'll give more info about those via email and at our next session. But we are at time, just slightly tipping over into the afternoon. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Zoe, again, and I'll see you all in a couple of weeks.